I've got a son. He's 2 years old. He's about this tall. And he just turned 2 a couple of weeks ago, and he's a little brown kid that I just love. He's so delicious, so joyful. There's such a light in him that just emanates. And for his birthday, I took him around to all the places around DC, coffee shops, museums, so we could get some free stuff, as one does on their birthday. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And as I was doing that, I mean, young people, old people, folks of every race, nationality, and demographic were just loving on him. They were giving him balloons and stuffed animals and pencils, even though I don't know if you should give pencils to a 2-year-old, but that's neither here nor there. And I just couldn't help but to think that I hope that the same love and affirmation they are giving him at 2, they give that to him when he's 10 years old, when he's 12 years old, when he's 14, and when he's 15. Because there's something insidious that's happening in this country where just by the fact of him being a little brown boy, at some point, there's a hate that's developing and a fear of him. And when I think about what that looks like in our lives right now, it looks like what happened to O'Shea Sibley, right? It looks like Camden Ryder in Florida. It looks like our allies like Lori Carlton being murdered. So I say that because I'm not sure what the origin of that hate is that really causes the world to love a kid at 2, but to hate him at 12 and 14 and 16. But I do know what the antidote to it is. It is trusted adults like us putting a stop to it. So I am honored to be in this room with you. And I also know that the work that we are doing together is quite literally life-saving. So thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everyone that's joining us in person and virtually. And I want to take this time to also welcome somebody to the stage who is doing incredible life-saving work. He's a good friend of HRC and a good friend of mine, too. If I had MySpace, he would be in my top 5. He's a teacher, a father, and a fierce advocate for LGBTQ+ youth. He's also, actually, I should say, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg also has the honor of being his husband. Chasten is a best-selling author, and his second book is I Have Something to Tell You for Young Adults. I could not be more thrilled to welcome this partner in the fight to the stage, the one, the only, Chasten Buttigieg.
Ooh, what an intro. Thank you, Kelly. I too have 2-year-olds, twins, and you should not hand them pencils. We just got our first wall art yesterday. Somehow Penelope acquired a blue crayon, and it is about this big. So I'm thinking about just putting molding around it and framing it on the wall. But I'm so glad to have you fighting for families like ours too. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for being here at the HRC. Thanks for everyone tuning in online. Being invited to speak on a panel highlighting the importance of protecting our teachers and our students in the LGBTQ community, as well as their allies, is a great privilege. But I also share in your exhaustion with the current noise and the hate and the fact that we continue to have these conversations in the first place. Nevertheless, we will not back down, and we are indeed stronger together, and we aren't going anywhere. So I'm honored to be here today to talk about how we will continue to lift one another up and how we will not allow hate to win. So I saw pumpkin spice is back at Dunkin' Donuts already. And for me, as an unabashed PSL lover, that usually means one thing for me as a former teacher. That means it's time to go back to school. All of my former middle school students would make fun of me every year when I drank too many of those. So teachers are headed back to school. And as they head back to school, they should only be focused on having the best school year yet, not wondering if they're going to lose their job because of what books are on their shelves or for having a picture of their partner on their desk. And as students prepare to fill those desks, they should know unequivocally that it is safe to be yourself at school. We know that may not be the case for every student or teacher this year, especially for those who identify as LGBTQ, who are being made to feel as if our hard-won progress and our share of equality is slipping away. The volume and the rhetoric on one side of a political aisle have many parents and teachers wondering just how we got here and how we continue to push forward. I hope that our work here today will be insightful and helpful, but let me start by speaking to the teachers and the students in the LGBTQ community, wherever you are, please know that you are not the problem. I'll say it again. You are not the problem. We are here today because we believe in you. We celebrate you and are ready to do what is necessary to protect you and to allow you to get back to teaching as the professionals you are with dignity and respect. With a mountain of anti-LGBTQ legislation sweeping this country, you have every right to wonder if it is safe to be yourself in the classroom. But let me be very clear, we are not in this moment of political tension and hatred because of you. This is not about books or whether you should be allowed to explain who gave you your wedding ring in your classroom. We are experiencing a moment in our nation's politics that is fueled by fear, misinformation, and violence perpetuated by those who seek not to protect anyone, but to purposefully harm them for the sake of political power. The LGBTQ community is being targeted by those who have abandoned the idea of public service, and that the idea of public service is about making life safer, easier, and better. Instead, our community is once again the scapegoat for those who would rather than lead to find solutions on real-world problems, something we often ask our own students to do. They spend their days firing off ignorant tweets that usually garner some lucrative media attention, and then that garners some campaign donations. It's a vicious, vicious cycle, and it's working for them. So they've stopped working for you. But that's just it. The problem with this moment is about them, not you. They are the reason we're here, not you. Your existence, your love, your identity is not the problem. Their problem is relevance and power, and sadly, we're the solution. Over the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to travel our country extensively, either in politics or with writing projects. And in each city I visit, I try to sit down with local teachers and student organizations to listen and learn what's happening in their backyards and how they feel about it. I've been in Utah, Florida, Texas, Missouri, Tennessee. In every community I'm in, I hear from students and teachers who are exhausted with the rhetoric. They're exhausted with the noise and the lack of support and understanding about what teachers and students are actually facing in schools. And not only are they exhausted by watching their LGBTQ peers face such violent and disgusting attacks, but they are also fed up with leaders who aren't focusing on the real issues at hand. And I see so much of my younger self in those stories that I hear, the fear, the resentment, the wanting for things to just be okay. As a closeted teenager growing up in conservative Northern Michigan, I never imagined that life would lead me to the incredible opportunities and places that it has. Growing up, I thought I was the only one, the only gay person in the world. I had no role models. None of my peers were out. None of my teachers were out. It was a simple fact of life that you could not be out. It was not safe to be out. In fact, I now know that I had a few teachers who were gay when I was going through school, but they were so deep in the closet because they were afraid of losing their jobs if anyone found out that simple fact about their life. And so I stayed quiet, they stayed quiet through all of the harassment and the fear. But I often imagine what life would have been like that, or what life would have been like had anyone during those first 17 years I spent in the closet told me it was okay to be myself, that there was nothing wrong with me. What would it have done for me to have read books with characters experiencing what I was experiencing in the halls of Traverse City West Middle School? What would it have meant to have seen my life reflected on the pages of the stories I was reading? Or quite simply in the people in my own town? What would it have been like to know I wasn't alone? How would life have changed had I seen LGBTQ people in my community being supported, accepted, living happy lives as teachers, nurses, doctors, pilots, and parents? That representation and affirmation can change and even save lives. We have the opportunity to make sure those questions don't go unanswered for the next generation. Pushing people back into the closet or preventing them from breaking it down quite simply costs lives, and we are not going back. When I was younger, I was often told that it gets better, and that phrase drove me nuts. I remember thinking, well, when? When is it going to get better? Because it wasn't better yesterday. Tomorrow doesn't look any better either. But here's the thing. It got better because other people made a commitment to make it so. I didn't just wake up one day and snap out of some pessimistic worldview. When I ran away from home after I came out, I was lucky enough to have parents who eventually called me back. And they put aside their own fears of rejection and mockery in a tight-knit community and friend group so that they could keep their kid alive. They just wanted to keep their kid alive. So much about what we're doing right now is just about keeping kids alive. When I came out, even though I lost some friends, the ones who stayed made sure I knew I was loved just the way I was. My allies, their love and their protection made it better, because it only gets better when other people commit to making it better. So this is a season for active allyship, for everyone to ask themselves, how am I making it better? And allyship isn't meant to be easy. Allyship might require some discomfort, because you might be the one standing between the noise and the person it's intended for. And as I say that, I feel like we should pause and acknowledge the heinous attack of Lori Carrollton in Cedar Glen, California, whose life was senselessly taken simply for being an ally, for displaying a pride flag outside of her store. So to Lori's family, please know that my family is sending you so much love, and please know how grateful millions and millions of Americans are for your allyship. An active ally is willing to intercept and redirect the pain while sheltering those it is intended for. Allyship isn't just wearing a t-shirt or posting a meme. Allyship means accepting the fact that you might get bruised up too, but you jump into the arena because you know that it matters, and we need those allies right now. Yes, fly the flag, wear the shirt, post the meme, but more than that, ask yourself, when it comes to the term ally, have I given it to myself or have I earned it? We all need to pause and question how we use our time, our money, our positions of power or privilege to benefit those who may not have it or who need our help the most. Don't put the work of equality and inclusion on the shoulders of those who are still yearning for it, who are still fearful that they may never see it. And yes, that means your students and your teachers too. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but let's also stop and celebrate the fact that we are here. And we're not going anywhere. In this season, I like to believe that Pride is 12 months out of the year. We're here. Teachers are some of the strongest people I know. We all know you don't go into teaching for the salary. You are born with a gift, a calling, one that should be backed up with mountains of gratitude and overwhelming support. I am so grateful for your service. You will always have a friend and an ally in me, and please know that everyone here at HRC, HRC's welcoming schools, as well as the NEA and the NPTA have your back. We are linking arms to allow your allies to be the best that they can be, to help them learn, to unlearn, and to lead, and to know that you should know that we are here to stand with you so that you can simply do what you are trained and gifted to do, teach. Thank you.
Thank you, Chasten. That was amazing. We are going to pivot into our first panel, and I'm so excited to have the three of you here today. We have Becky Pringle. Becky Pringle is the president of the NEA, a fierce social justice warrior, defender of educational rights, and an unrelenting advocate for all students and communities of color, leading the largest labor union in the United States. Becky Pringle. We also have with us Nathan Monell. He's the executive director of the National PTA. Since 2015, Nathan leads the America's oldest and largest volunteer child advocacy program with over 20,000 local units in the United States and abroad. Welcome, Nathan. And we have Chasten Buttigieg, who's already been introduced, and I'm so glad to have you on this panel. So I'm just going to get right to it. This first question, any of you feel free to jump in. We'll just move move along. So based on the introduction and the passage of so many anti-LGBTQ bills in state legislatures this past year, what does it look like this year for us to ensure safety and support for LGBTQ plus students across this country, especially our trans youth, who in many cases can no longer enjoy sports, use the bathrooms that align with their gender identity? Any of you?
Thank you. My goodness, Chasten, thank you for sharing your story. It was both riveting and inspiring, and we appreciate that you're in and have been, you are and have been in this space, in this fight with us. I feel a little compelled to frame my why I'm in this space too. I didn't know when a young gay student came to visit our NEA board of directors, it's 200 folks from all across the country, as David stood up and addressed us and told us about his experiences as a 13-year-old in school way back in 1996. Didn't know that when one of our board members asked him, David, what can we do as teachers and support staff on Monday morning? What can we do differently to support you? And David said to us, I just need to see you. I need to know that you are safe, that your classroom is safe, that when I walk down the halls, you're safe, that I'm safe. I need to see you. It changed my life. Because before then, I didn't want to cause David or anyone else to bring upon him the light of recognition and ridicule or discrimination. And so I thought I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't. I didn't know at the time that as I changed my behavior on Monday, and other Davids knew I was safe, that my daughter was watching me. She was in 8th grade. I taught her that's a different story. But she didn't know, and I didn't know. But she knew I was safe. And when she made that choice to come out to me, she knew she had a welcoming and loving mother who protected other students and would protect her. By the way, I need to brag a little bit. She and her wife were the first lesbian couple to be on Say Yes to the Dress. Yeah, I know. They loved
That's
us so much.
amazing.
They followed us to Cancun for their wedding. LePep picks a fun dress. But I think about the voice of students as I think about what has to happen in this moment, making sure that their voice is centered, that they're always central in everything you do. I just finished, as I ran up the block from NEA to here, an Instagram live series, Honesty in Education, which I do monthly. And joining me today was Katie Rinderly. If that name is not familiar to you, you need to Google it and you need to follow her story. She was fired in March for reading My Shadow is Purple, this book that her children selected from the Scholastic Book Fair that they asked she read because it was a story of being inclusive and understanding each other and being your full self. And here she is, fired from her job. When I think about what we must do in this moment as laws in Georgia, which is the state she's in, and of course, Florida, which is passing every law they can think of to marginalize people. And not just in those places where you hear about, but in those pockets within this country that are banning books. When I think about the policies that are being passed at every level local, state, and national. It is in this moment that we must continue to stand up. It is in this moment that we have to stand in our truth and our power. It is in this moment that we have to fight back. We have been fighting for a long time, haven't we, to pass the Equality Act. We've been fighting for a long time to pass the Safe Schools Improvement Act. We can't stop doing that just because we are being threatened. We can't stop doing that just because we are being further marginalized. We can't stop doing that just because right now, to Chasten's point, because we know what this is about, just right now, they're sitting in those positions of power. We have to, in this moment, continue to lift up our voice. We have to run for those positions of power.
Yes.
We have to support people who are running for those positions of power. We have to use this moment as we have allies in the Biden administration to support the work they're doing to give guidance around Title IX so that our students are protected and supported. It is in this moment as we head back to school that we have to join with our natural allies, our parents. And we have to show to our students that we are creating a safe space for them, that we are creating a space for them to fight for themselves and for each other, that welcoming schools exist everywhere across this country.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. You bring up so much of what you just said is just hits home. But one of the things that I will say from you as an educator is the importance of having an anchor teacher for every single student. So every student should have somebody in the building that they can go to, especially our LGBTQ kids and our trans kids. Having that anchor support is invaluable, changes the entire landscape. So you were that anchor person, and we need all of the educators out there to be those anchor folks for kids in schools, because without that, you know, they're not thriving. Absolutely. I'm going to pivot to a question specifically for you, Nathan. We know that parent engagement is a key element of a thriving school community. How can we ensure that the needs of parents and students from all backgrounds, family structures, and experiences can learn about the real world around them and reduce the increasing tension around parent engagement on matters of LGBTQ+ topics?
Thank you for the question, Kelly. I'm honored to be here with both of you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. This is a tough one. And I want to start by saying I was also, Chasten, one of those students who was in the closet. And it wasn't until a professor at Michigan sat down and said, "How's that gay thing working for you?" that I had first educator who ever said and acknowledged that I was gay. And so that was the beginning of my coming out journey, was one educator calling me out. I also come to this discussion as a married partner. My husband and I have 2 Latino children we adopted, and we sent the last one off to college this week. And so we are in the middle of this as parents and formally as a student. So parental engagement is a tough one right now. As you may know, National PTA created the National Standards for Family School Partnerships. It serves as the guideline for schools all across the country about how we should be engaging families, because we know that when families, educators, community leaders all work together, we get the best outcomes for students, and we get the best outcomes academically for them as well as their well-being. We just recently revised those with help from HRC and others. And one of those tenets of successful family school partnerships is welcoming all families. And I think one of the challenges we have in our schools right now, and I think particularly of Florida, as you mentioned, as an example, when a young child shows up with 2 dads and they're not allowed to talk about that family structure, that family dynamic, what does that do to that child? What does it do to the child sitting next to that person who wants to understand what's going on? You know how kindergartners and first graders are curious? It's like, how come they have, I remember those conversations with my kids, other kids saying, how come there's 2 moms? How come there's 2 dads? But what we're seeing in the family and parent landscape is We have very loud voices in our community who are not the representative of the majority. And we've lost progress. I think the first question was about how can we ensure that our children are going to be safe who are from the LGBTQ community. We can't assure them they're going to be safe because we've lost progress over the last couple of years, state after state after state. And the reason that's happening, a lot of it, is because a very small minority, a very local minority, a strident minority, have taken advantages of some of the weaknesses that our school systems experienced during the pandemic, and then have built upon those to say, public schools aren't trustworthy. Let me tell you why. Public schools aren't safe for your kids. Let me tell you why. And if you show up at most school board meetings right now, the voices you're going to hear are not going to be the representative voices of most parents. We know this because we poll parents on a regular basis, and the very broad majority of parents, we're talking 65, 75, 85% of parents, agree on some really basic principles. I'm going to tell you a couple of them. One, they all agree that programs and policies need to be in place to make every single student be safe, seen, and respected. You can't ask a parent in the country, do you want your child to be safe, seen, and respected? They're going to say, yes, of course. And they want programs and policies that show that. Parents overwhelmingly support curriculum that's inclusive, that represents a fair representation of our history, one that promotes and discusses issues that are failures and successes, because we want our students to learn from our history. And we want them to see icons that represent people who've often been targeted and marginalized. Parents widely agree that classrooms should present age-appropriate education on issues like sex education, sex health, sexual orientation, and they believe that's necessary for their child to be ready for the years to come for them. And they believe that libraries should contain accurate information, historically accurate, currently accurate information that's free from bias from folks who have a doctrinal approach to life, who don't believe those particular ideas that are found in the library, or who have other biases who would restrict others from reading things they don't want their children to read. So what do? A lot of parents don't want to fight. They don't want to go to a school board meeting and have a fight. And so they sat back during this last couple of years and they watched the thing kind of like a tennis match, a debate that's going on. And they can no longer afford to be passive in those discussions. And at National PTA, we are committed to being very demonstratively loud about these issues. We know it's important for us in every community to be raising our voices and to ask schools to get better about including parent voice. The only way to talk to school is not through a board meeting screaming and yelling. We can do polls, we can do surveys, we can do focus groups to make sure all the voices of all the parents are being heard. When all the voices of all the parents are being heard, we're going to see a change in public education.
Thank you. We're so proud to partner with the National PTA. You have really stepped up and with NEA and NPTA and us together is really, really amazing. So thank you for that. I'm going to shift to you, Chasten. You mentioned when you were speaking that, you've had the opportunity to hear from so many people around the country as you're traveling about their fears as they head back to school. What is one piece of advice you could share to educators listening right now as they're heading back to school? Tough one.
Yeah, it's just different. Going back to school is different. It's not the same. I've been telling folks around the country, if your kid has a teacher, you should consider yourself very lucky, because you look around the country and you see how teachers are routinely attacked, name called, accused of heinous things. And you wonder why some people would rush into that profession for low pay and low respect. So if you have a teacher in your kid's classroom right now, you're extremely lucky. And so much of what I've been wanting to say about education around the country isn't what advice do I have for teachers? It's what advice do I have for their allies? Because the teachers are to teach. They want to be respected as a professional. Librarians want to be respected as the professionals that they are, but they also need to know that other people have their back. So going into the school year, if I was headed back into the classroom this fall, I would want to know who has my back, because I'm wondering, are all the parents of my incoming class supportive of me? And if things get ugly in this state or in this school, who has my back? And I want to be told by those in positions of power, all the way from, the NEA and PTA to my administrator, to my fellow teachers. I want someone to tell me that they have my back, and don't wait for the ugliness to come knocking on your door. Start out the school year by reminding your teachers or promising your teachers that you have their back. And in this school, we focus on teaching the next generation. We're not here to fight some made up culture war. We're here to teach. And I want you to focus on being the professional that you are. You'll be treated with the dignity and the respect that you deserve. And if any of that ugliness comes knocking, know that I have your back. I think administrators really need to have that conversation. And one of the most important allies in a student's life is their parents. And one of the simplest things that parents can do that I know many of us didn't benefit from is have a very quick and easy, I can't promise that it won't be painless conversation, that you love your child unconditionally. I knew my parents loved me, but I always thought it was conditional on the fact that I'd be straight. My parents never said, by the way, we will love you whether you're gay or straight or whether you want to play football or dance or whoever you are, we will love you. You will always have a loving home here. We should have that conversation with our families and our kids right now. And administrators should have the conversation about support at school.
Yeah, thank you. There's a common thread around ally behavior all the way around, right? And so important for the loudest voices now to be those that are speaking up to make sure that all students are supported and all educators are supported. I'm going to ask one more question as we wrap up this first panel. Maybe more for Becky, but maybe not. Whoever wants to jump in. If parents, educators, students, or other school personnel are experiencing this blatant discrimination or being threatened or observing things around them that are clearly wrong, what can they do? Or what words of guidance, advice do you have for folks who are feeling stuck or feeling scared?
First of all, for educators, and it's so important, not just our teachers, but our support staff, our faculty members whose academic freedom, I could go on, as you know what's happening. They need to know what their rights are. They need to know what they can do to stand up and be that person, that caring adult in that school that can be seen, and they can fight for their students' rights and they can fight for their rights. So one of the things we've done at the NEA is not only have we produced a guide on knowing your rights, but state by state, analyzing the laws have been passed, because they are intentionally ambiguous and broad. And what we don't want to have happen is for teachers to self-censor, which is not just a threat, it's happening. And Chasten, I can't thank you enough for saying what you said, because they do need to know that they have their back, but not just the administrators, because the administrators are right there in the middle, right? They need to know the school board has their back, that the parents have their back. All of that needs to happen. So knowing their rights not only helps them ensure that they know what the law says and what it doesn't say, that they don't go beyond that if they have one of the onerous laws that has passed in their state. And they also need to know that their union has their back. And as we fight to save Katie's job right now, and fighting to save other educators' jobs across this country, that we have the power of 3 million members and allies and partners that will be helping us to fight to make sure that they can lift up their voice. The other thing, elections matter.
Yes, they do.
Can I say that again? Elections matter. And we have the power when we have people who are in those positions of power to make those decisions, and we can turn that back. I mean, Michigan just passed a law that, speaking of Michigan, right? You could stand the microphone to you. They've done a lot of stuff. Woo. But we know that we have to make our laws inclusive of sexual orientation and gender, trans students. And when we have that power, we need to lean into it and we need to do it. We need to make sure that we're standing up and having school boards pass resolutions that protect our kids. We need to do it when we have that power. And if we don't have that power, then you need to run. See educators run. See educators run. Please contact NEA and we'll help you see educators run so they can support their students and other educators. So there is room and space for everyone in this moment to take action. Please join us at NEA, NEA Ed Justice. If you're not a part of the Justice League, you need to be part of the Justice League. We will get you the materials and tools and support, connect you with others to make sure that you can stand in this moment and know your power.
Yes. You know, we could continue this conversation for another 30 minutes, and I would love to continue this conversation, but we are, first I want to thank you all for sharing. We're gonna pivot to talking with some folks that are in the classroom and in the school buildings. So I want to again, thank you so much for being here and for speaking today. And we're going to take a moment and we're going to pivot to the next panel. Thank you all.